On today's video, we're going to look at the steps for solving multi-step equations. We've been doing this a lot in class, but we haven't actually named the steps that we're going to use. For instance, on the problem 2 times x plus 1 equals 4 times x plus 2 plus x, in class, we would have been using pictures to solve this problem. So we would have done our two groups of x plus 1 on one side of the equation, and then we would have done four groups of x plus 2 on the other side of the equation, plus our additional x. And we would have looked at this and we wrote down 2x plus 2 equals 5x plus 8. Then we would have moved our x's to one side of the equation because our goal is to get x all by itself. So it creates less work if we move that 2x away, we get rid of it. To do that, I have to add negative 2x there and get rid of those zero pairs. So I would show that in my equation as minus 2x on both sides, and we're left with 2 equals 3x plus 8. Then we would notice that we have 8 on the same side of the equation as our x's, and we don't want that. So we would subtract 8 from that side by pairing it with 8 negatives. And we have to do that on both sides, get rid of those zero pairs, and we are left with negative 6 equals 3x. And finally, we would say, oh, we got 3 x's, we need to put our negative 6 into 3 groups. So we divide by 3 for a final answer of negative 2 equals x. And this is great, just you don't want to use pictures all the time because it's going to get really bogged down and not fun. So I'm going to share with you the actual steps, and we're going to name what we're doing on each of these. So this is the same problem again. And this was our first step. To look at our multiplication problems, we had two groups of x plus 1 and four groups of x plus 2, and we had to expand those out a little bit so that we could see what that really means. This is your first step when solving a multi-step equation. You want to use the distributive property, and you do that so that you can multiply. Okay. Once you get that, then you have to look at that plus x off to the side. So we put that with our other x's on that side of the equation. By doing this, we are combining like terms. Basically, we want to know what's the total of each term. So on the left side of the equation, I have a total of 2x plus 2 1s. And on the right side of the equation, I have a total of 5x plus 8 1s. So our first step was to distribute, that's in purple. And our second step was to combine like terms, and that is in blue. Now that we have 2x plus 2 equals 5x plus 8, we have to worry about what do we do now. So remember, our goal is to get x all by itself on the equation, or in the equation. So I need either to subtract 2x or to subtract 5x. And when we're drawing the picture, taking 2x away is much easier than taking 5x away. It just is a time saver. So we pair it up with two negative x's, and they go away. Well, in this, in our steps, we would call this, or we would name this some form of removing the variable for one side of the equation. And we're removing it because we start out with 2x plus 2 on the left side, but whenever we're done with this step, there's no longer an x on that side of the equation. We're just left with 2. And then we have 3x plus 8 on the other side. So now that we have 2 equals 3x plus 8, the biggest problem we have here is that we have 8 remaining on the right side of the equation with those x's, and we want those x's to be by themselves. So the only way to get rid of them on that side is to pair them with 8 negatives. When we draw the picture, we pair them with 8 negatives. We get rid of our zero pairs. So on this step, this is removing a constant from the other side of the equation. The constant is your 8 here, and we don't want our variable x and a constant 8, which are the squares, to be on the same side of the equation. So we need to get rid of it. The only way to get rid of it is to do the opposite operation or the inverse operation. So we're removing it from one side of the equation because we start with 3x plus 8, but when we're done with this step, that 8 is no longer there because it's been moved to the other side. So now we have negative 6 equals 3x. Once we have negative 6 equals 3x, this is kind of your basic one-step equation from 7th grade. And we want our negative 6 to be put into 3 groups. And we get rid of 2 of those groups on both sides, and we're left with negative 2 ones equals an x. In this step, sometimes you will multiply and sometimes you would divide. But in this problem, we divided. So this step is where you determine the amount of ones the variable represents. This is when you're actually solving that problem. So here we find out that x is equal to negative 2. So let's recap the steps real quick just to make sure that you got them all. The first step was to distribute. That's when we multiply. The second step was to combine like terms. How many of each term do we have on each side of the equation? The third step is to move the variables. Remember, we want to know what one variable equals, so we have to make sure that we don't have variables on both sides of our equation. The fourth step is to move the constant, and the fifth step is going to be to multiply or divide depending on the problem. We're going to work lots of these in class, and sorry that this one went over 5 minutes, but it's quality material that you need to know to make your life easier in algebra. So we'll see you tomorrow in class.